Okay, so we're gonna break for woo. I'll get around to the reason for the title in a bit. So I'm actually taking a break from cleaning up, and I'm going to talk a little bit of woo. So I did my breaking for the woo, but that wasn't really the the impetus for that. Anyway, the CCP rocket is going to be coming down this weekend. It's a big bugger. It's 21 metric tons or 23 metric tons, depending on which sources you're looking at. They're saying it's not active, which means it's going to burn up. But still, we haven't had anything that large. It's larger. It's double the size of the previous large chunk of metal to come hurtling back. And there's no way of knowing where it's going to hit, except that, you know, the odds favor the ocean because we've got so much of it. So that'll be interesting to see where it actually comes down, how we discover it. That'll be a really interesting thing. And then the global reaction to it as an after effect. We're seeing accidents all over. Locally here in Washington State, all up and down I-5 corridor, there's been a number of extraordinarily stupid car wrecks, right? Things that should not be going on. Now I see why we're going to need Elon Musk to get his software shit together and have self-driving cars 100%, because all the people that are vaxxed are going to be too dangerous to allow behind the wheel. So, this accident thing is unrolling in our nation. It's also in Europe. So be advised that if you're out driving, you need to be at your best just to avoid all the other guys who are not. So, you know, allow extra room, check your sides all the time, check your blind spots all the time, and just watch out, because it's getting very dangerous out there with the vaxxed. Now, this is a short-term, you know, probably less than 3-year issue. But for that period of time through 2024, we need to be extra vigilant in our activities when we're out in public, where vaccinated people may be out operating heavy machinery, and it's getting dangerous. A couple of things about the aliens. Came across this Bob Lazar interview in which there was the notation that while he was at S4, he read a document prepared for new inductees in the process there, in which they did some discussions, and they talked there was a statement in there in which they referenced that the aliens called humans, containers. And that's an interesting choice of words. And it tells us a great deal if it's factual, if indeed there are aliens, and if indeed humans have talked to them, and if indeed these aliens do call us containers. It tells us a great deal about the aliens, as well as our relationship with them, and even more importantly, their relationship with us. And it has to do with so I would suspect that was a discussion or information from what we would term gray aliens, all right? The little grays, or whatever shape or size, but these artificial construct beings, these biological robots, they would call us containers from their viewpoint. We are a container for the doer in the body. Okay, so our body is not us, unlike them. Their body is them. The existence or non-existence of that body, once that body ceases to function, they cease to exist as a personality, as anything, which is not true of us. Our bodies are containers for a portion of a 1/12 portion of a 1/3 harmonic of a larger being. And so we're this smaller, we are an entity that is a shell, a container for our greater human self. And this is evident, would be evident to any number of beings that are not like us, that are not souled, right? They don't have souls per se. And I've heard the claim that all the gray aliens, all the little green men, so to speak, share a common soul, and that's horseshit. Okay, souls don't work that way. So I can I can understand why it might be described that way, but it's very inaccurate to consider it. So. Anyway, so there was just that particular part there. Nothing more on aliens, but we're seeing a ton more stuff about the UFOs coming on out. It will continue. This is May. This is the serious month of preparation for the secrets revealed in June and further on. So you're going to get more and more and more of this stuff coming out until it becomes part of the news cycle, just the way that Biden's dementia is not. All right, so now you are Cubano, all right, especially if you live here in the USA. So everybody in the United States now, you can consider yourself Cuban. You're living under a Marxist regime, and you're going to have to make do, and there's going to be supply chain shortages, so you can't do anything about it. And so we don't have 57 Chevys or 60 1959 Buicks to keep running. But we will have to make do with what we've got because the supply chains are breaking down all over the planet, and one of the first things that will be hit, and is being hit, are the repairs of everything everywhere. So this is why, even though we're a year past the secret sneak attack by the Chinese, biological weapons on us, here, I'm still accumulating stuff that's going to not be available through the supply chains. So I've told my crew to acquire tools, all right? And not 18-volt battery-powered tools. Yeah, you can have those and they're fine and so on, but presume that there's going to be a period of time when you won't be able to get those rechargeable batteries, and they'll run out and not work anymore. So you need a tool that's got a tail on it you can plug into an outlet. Because we're going to have to go back to that. And we're going to have to go back to the repair of many of the things now that we would otherwise discard because they used to be easily replaced from China. That's going to break down very rapidly. So by August, anyway, so pretty soon you'll start seeing people, as the monetary system further degrades, start setting up repair shops in order to make a living because they're good at fixing things, right? So they'll fix things. And so we're going to go back, interestingly enough, in my understanding of things and how it'll all evolve, as we're all Cubano now, we're going to go back to mom and pop kind of, bodegas and little machine shops, this sort of thing, as we work our way out of the horror that globalization has intruded on us. We're not going to do the Great Reset. All of that's horseshit. The powers that be are failing it on all levels. That's within Normie-land. But anyway, so let's get into the rain here for a minute. So over the next, okay, so we're in a cool down now into June. So the United States, North America is cooling down. Some parts of Eurasia are also in a cool down. They will also follow along, lagging slightly behind our weather patterns through the rest of this year. In general, we're in a cooling trend in the Northern Hemisphere. This cooling trend is going to bring exceptional weather to the U.S., to North America this year. It's going to do so really beginning in June as we get to these oscillations in June where we have days of very hot, intense heat that follow very cold days and are followed by cold days or colder days. And so this is going to yield a large amount of rain and subsequent flooding from the Ohio River valleys, the Red River valleys, so all across the top tier of the United States in here, right, in between the Great Lakes. So all of these rivers that drain down, running down into the Gulf, that's Texas, there's Florida. Okay, so all of these rivers here are going to flood this direction, but we're also going to get Appalachian rainfall in a way we have not in I don't know how long. And we're going to have cool periods and then warm periods. So you're going to have cold wet and basically warm muggy wet. But this is going to probably end up contributing to the floods of the rivers that affect nuke plants in the southeast. Because it's going to continue all summer. And it's going to be an exceptional summer in the USA, already is, for abnormally timed, out of season storms. So just be prepared. You know, if it can flood and break down this year, it will flood and break down this year. So get yourself ready for that as you may. You know, I'm trying to do that now. I've got wood issues, right? So I know that now is the time for me to acquire a new chainsaw, and now is the time for me to take every care with that saw to perpetuate its use for many, many, many years, because there may not be a replacement for me many years down the road, right? Okay, so Normie Land. Normie Land and fiat currencies are interlinked, but Normie Land is my label for what mainstream media wants to do to human population. So I like the idea of the intense debates that used to fill the pages of the New York Times in 1890, in which they were debating central currencies, the central banks and currencies, lucid, articulate, reasoned, in-depth debates in the op-ed pages, in the articles. It was a true education, because you were hearing the thoughts of your contemporaries. You know, debate those subjects with you. No rancor, no name calling, any of this kind of stuff. Now all you got to do for a debate on one side is say, oh, he's a Trump supporter, and that ends it that way, right? And then the other side, all you have to do is say, oh, he took a vax, or you know, he voted for Biden, and that ends it. There's no further discussion that way. So Normie Land's is being turned into idiocracy, and part of that movement into idiocracy has been this infantile, has been trying to make everybody infants, to keep them not maturing. We see this explicitly with the puberty blocker drugs. So, but we're going to see, that just as an example. And as another example there, we're going to see a lot of problems with the COVID-based issues within Normie Land that are much more than we're seeing now. So there's a lot of kids dying now, there's doctors dying now from taking the vax. We've got a lot of vax problems, we've got vaxidents showing up. But now we're starting to get into the breakdown of the narrative here, is breaking down for the powers that be as we go forward around the vax. This breakdown is contagious almost, because of the nature of how news is picked up and moved through the social order these days, right? And so we're going to see more and more and more of that as we go forward. Again, this is the month of May. It's a serious month. There's going to be serious things happen, like 23-ton rocket falling on your head, that kind of shit. And so Normie Land has taken a bunch of hits, and the powers that be are freaking out. This is going to cause the powers that be to be dangerous, as they always are when they freak out. Now, the good news is, for all of us that are not part of the powers that be and are not really part of Normie Land, but we live in the same physical continent that they're trying to build Normie Land in, we have to be aware that things could get dangerous as a result of the breakdown of the narrative, which is inherently their only support anymore, as fiat currencies are dying. Okay, so the fiat currencies die. Empires die when their currencies die. The Roman Empire died coincident to them fiddling the coins, putting copper into the silver in order to dilute the amount of silver they had, so that the king was richer in issuing his coins, or the emperor. So Dilution of money always leads to the destruction of the empire. We're in dilution of money. We're in the very end stages of it. The hyperinflation, what Kondratiev called the crack-up boom, is here. We're living through it. And so this is going to be like Venezuela on steroids, right? Now, I don't believe the USA is going to go communist. I don't think we're going to take the approach that Venezuelans did to this. I don't believe that we're going to be able to persist in the fake narratives that the powers that be are foisting on people because of the alien issue. Because there's some shit there kicking the powers that be deep state's ass, and they have to bring that out. And that's a big, huge wild card. There's a whole lot more that forms my opinion on this as to why we won't go that route. Another part of it is that the fiat currencies are dying very rapidly. We only need to look at cryptocurrencies in order to gain an appreciation of how fast the purchasing power of the dollar is dying. But this is basically a transition. The cryptocurrencies allow us to transition into something where we can do business with one another without an officially sanctioned, issued by the powers that be currency. So it's a people's currency at that level. Now, the fiat currencies, the dollar and all, are really taking a beating globally. So the rule used to be, before mass communications and before global interconnection of the financial system, so before globalism, the rule was that you had between 6 and 12 months following the onset of hyperinflation before your currency died, okay? So that was actually true relative to Venezuela, because when they started their hyperinflation, the Venezuelan currency crapped out just barely 6 months into it. Now, it did not die 100% because it's basically being propped up by the stronger, more dynamic systems around Venezuela. We don't have that luxury, okay? The US dollar is the global reserve currency. So that brings up two issues. When it dies, there is no replacement that we don't build. So we either build it ahead of time or we build it following. Now, the powers that be are going to try and have something ready for us to use, and in the old Alta reports, the populace rejected their offerings 3 times, and then we went to our own hodgepodge kind of a system as SciFi world really took off. The rejection of those 3 proffered currency systems, 3 resets, if you will, could be occurring right now. They could proffer 3 resets all within a matter of a couple of months, and each one gets knocked down just by the virtue of the tumultuous times or whatever, and then we go on to something else. Or, and it could be that something else takes us a number of years to resolve, to develop. Or we could have a situation where we have reset number 1 that's rolled out in 1 year, and that doesn't take. They roll out another one, and the next year that one doesn't take, and then they roll out a third one in that same second year. That one doesn't take, and then in the third year we have the resurgence of a true global economy that is individuated because it's not operating through the powers that be system structures, right? But nonetheless, the data sets that said that, so the old Alta reports said that it would be a 3-year process, right? Not 12 months. But in that 3-year process, the currency will be collapsing in huge chunks until we basically have to essentially abandon it and get on to something else. I suspect that we'll start that 3-year process sometime this year, which would mean 2024. We would be pulling out of it in some measure. So it's going to be a rough number of years. Tough times make for tough humans, and we need to be tough, especially with the space aliens, especially with the pollution of the society by the vaxidents and so on. You will hear, speaking of vaxidents, you will hear of the crimes against humanity cases that are now being brought, and those will gain momentum. There's no question about that. Also speaking about the vaccinates and the vaccine in general, if you know somebody that has been vaccinated, and they show up with the little red dots or the rash on their skin, I've had people that I've taken C60 to, and they've used the C60 on their skin, and it aids in clearing that up. It makes the little red bumps slack back off into the skin and then spread out and not even really be a bruise anymore after a few days. So you put the C60 on, and then you wait a few more hours, and about maybe 3 times a day they put it on, and it's a C60 in olive oil or C60 in avocado oil, so it makes the skin a bit oily where that stuff is, but you just put a thin layer on, and it absorbs, and the C60 is apparently helping to clear that up. Now, other individuals that are having problems with the vax, I've advised them to take the C60 internally, and there are some small hints, small reports that indeed there is a little bit of easing of some of the symptoms that come along with these damn vax shots. So C60 may aid. I know it does aid those people that have spike protein encounter reactions. Okay, so I know of this individual who was laying carpet, right? And he works sporadically laying carpet whenever they have a job. He works on this with this crew and lays big amounts of carpet. They had a big job. They did a commercial carpet laying job. He's familiar with it. He's been doing carpet laying for like 9 or 10 years already. So we can't put down what happened to his exposure to the carpet, the fibers in the carpet, or any of that kind of stuff, right? But this guy worked with 3 other people in a small, or in an enclosed space over the course of 3 days, and by the end of the second day, he had a nosebleed that was basically pretty continuous, and he said his throat was irritated, and he was always coughing and coughing and hacking, and so he put on a mask. He doesn't like wearing the masks. But he put on a mask thinking that it was the fibers from the carpet that they were laying. Never happened to him before, and he said it was a commercial carpet, and it's the type that they glue down, so it's not like you got to bash it or do anything to bring up the fibers. And it's not a new glue. He's used to being around that. So anyway, so he couldn't put it down to that, but he was working with vaccinated people, and he did so for 3 days, and finally on the 3rd day they had to let him go because his nose was bleeding so bad that it was just basically he was at risk. He had to walk around with a paper towel on his nose all the time, and he was risking getting blood on the carpet. And so the foreman said, I don't know what's going on, but we can't have you here for the rest of the job. Fortunately for him, it was only another day after that, and they paid him for that day as well. But 2 days later, no problem, right? The next day he had a little bit of nose bleed. If he would touch it, it was quite sore and tender. And it was at that point that I gave him the C60, and then the day after that, no worries whatsoever. He's doing great. He can blow his nose without initiating a bloody nose and so on. So the C60, and he was not shy about taking that 2-ounce bottle, just gone, right? Just gulped it. And so, I don't know. I think 2 ounces, I think that's like, I think it's 3 tablespoons, 4 tablespoons in there or something. I have to think about it. Anyway, so it does appear to help at that level. Now, it could be, of course, that he was just, it's an exposure issue, and not having the exposure that day that he took the C60, he would have already mended anyway. We don't know. But we do know that the C60 applied to the skin does provide relief to those people that have the skin issues. So, okay, so one other thing here is that the magnet work is going really well. So I've got potential new partners here and working on moving things along that way, and have made some interesting new discoveries, and I'm waiting on materials. That's why I'm cleaning up this area. I need to set up for more experiments, and I got to build myself some kind of a little safety cage this time, so I don't nick myself with these damn magnet bits as they break off. They're really sharp. No place to put a new magnet. Anyway, so but the magnet work's going really well, and I'm getting back into more and more of the outdoor work here, so videos are likely to be much fewer, and we've got just a ton of woo stuff showing up. But I can't spend all my time talking about the stuff because I got to react to it. I've got to get out there and do stuff. All these things are happening. You know, go out and buy your tools, get yourself set up for that. We're going to have to make do with stuff. And basically recreate our infrastructure as the globalist system collapses here over these next 3 or 4 months. And it'll collapse quite significantly, sizably, in those 3 or 4 months. For instance, we're having a nationwide plastic shortage here in the US. That might continue for 3 or 4 years. That really has an impact in so many ways that you just can't anticipate it ahead of time. So there's all these kind of infrastructure issues that are affecting us now, and you need to, if you're awake and paying attention to shit, start reacting to the infrastructure, because it is not going to be repaired. It won't be self-repairing. It will get worse from this point on. The weather will get worse. The social order disturbances will get worse. The food chain, food supply issues will get worse. The supply chain issues will get worse. The general worsening is part of this acceleration of and the energies from space are going to get worse, as well as as I say, the social order upheaval as the narrative breaks down. So under the circumstances, as unquiet as it is now, today, tomorrow, the day after, this is still very calm compared to what it's going to be 2 months, 3 months, 4 months from now. And it can go very bad very rapidly. So this is the time to get everything you can in order. You know, if it's broken, fix it. If it's dirty, clean it. You know, if you're storing it for use, make sure you're storing it properly for use. All of those kind of things, because we're in this situation. We've been attacked by the Chinese bioweapon. And the Vax bioweapon. We're reacting to that. Space aliens are going to show up, at least in terms of official announcements, and it's going to get really strange this year. So, you know, as though it hasn't already. So last year and this year so far are, that was your training day. That was your exercise to train for what's coming. Live long and prosper. You know, pity the poor humans.